They burned the check in front of me, $35 million gone in flame. You betrayed us, they screamed. I stayed quiet and smiled. They believed they had taken everything from me, but they had no clue what I had already done. The room was full of guests, dressed in black, pretending to care. It was the will reading of my late father-in-law. The Lancaster family sat tall and proud, certain they would receive it all. When the lawyer read my name and the amount, $35 million, the air turned cold. Judith, my mother-in-law, stood up in rage. She fooled him. This girl doesn't belong here, she yelled. My husband Ethan said nothing, just stared at me with hate in his eyes. I held the check for a moment. Judith snatched it from my hands. She lit a match, touched the flame to the paper, and watched it burn. To them, this was justice. A punishment. They thought I would cry or fight, but I stayed still calm. My smile made them uneasy. This was never about the money. They saw the check as power. I saw it as a tool. The real work had already begun long before that moment. I had found papers, secrets, and proof. I had been planning while they were sleeping easy. They always saw me as a quiet outsider, a girl with no background, lucky to marry their golden son. What they never understood was I had a reason for everything, a reason to be there, a reason to wait. As the check turned to ash, Judith looked proud of herself. Ethan looked sure I was done, but the game had only just started. It all began 3 months ago. One small lie. One drawer that should have stayed locked. The Lancaster family looked perfect from the outside. They were rich, well-known, and praised for their charity work. People called them kind and classy. They smiled for cameras and gave big donations. But inside their home, it was different. Cold, strict, and full of rules. Everything had to be just right. The family cared more about their name than anything else. Claire had married Ethan, the youngest son. He was handsome, charming, and the family's favorite. From the first day, Claire never really fit in. She came from a simple background. She didn't have rich parents or fancy degrees. That made her an outsider in their eyes. Judith, Ethan's mother, never hid her feeling. She called Claire sweet, in public, but spoke to her like a servant when no one was looking. She smiled while saying sharp things that cut deep. She gave Claire small tasks like arranging flowers or helping with menus, but always acted like Claire could never get it quite right. At dinners, Claire was often the target. Judith would speak over her or correct her words. Once, Claire shared an idea about a charity event. Judith laughed and said, "That's adorable." The others chuckled. Ethan just stayed silent. He never stood up for Claire. Sometimes he even joined in, brushing off Claire's feelings like they didn't matter. No one in the family asked about Claire's past or her dreams. They acted like she was just there because she married Ethan. They whispered that she wanted money, not love. Claire heard the comments, but she stayed quiet. She started paying attention, watching, listening. She noticed how the family acted when they thought no one was watching, how Judith treated the house staff, how Ethan changed his tone when he spoke to his father versus his sibling. The smiles were only for show. Underneath, everything felt cold and fake. Claire felt small in that big house, but she didn't show it. She nodded, smiled, and pretended not to notice. But inside, she began writing everything down. Not just in her mind, but in notes, saved messages, and small recordings. She started keeping track. Who said what? Who made decisions? What they hid from each other. She didn't know what she would do with it yet. But she knew one thing. She had to be careful. They didn't see her as a threat. They saw her as a mistake. One quiet evening, Claire was in the study of her father-in-law. He had asked her to bring him some tea. While waiting for him to return, she looked around the room. It was filled with books, files, and old furniture. The study was always locked, but lately he had been letting her in more often. He was old, and his health was getting worse. He trusted Claire more than the others, maybe because she listened when no one else did. She walked over to the large wooden desk. Something about it caught her attention. The drawer on the left didn't sit quite right. It looked a little uneven. She knelt down and gently pulled. Nothing happened. She pushed the side, and to her surprise, the drawer popped open. It was hidden behind a false panel. Inside were old papers, a flash drive, and an audio recorder. Claire sat still, staring at what she had found. She knew this wasn't meant to be seen. Her hands shook a little as she picked up the flash drive and the recorder. She didn't open anything right away. She carefully closed the drawer and stood up just as her father-in-law walked back in. He didn't notice anything. He smiled and asked her to stay for a while. She nodded. That night, Claire waited until everyone was asleep. She locked the bedroom door and opened her laptop. She plugged in the flash drive. There were folders with numbers and foreign names. Some documents had details about accounts in other countries. There were charts, transfers, and large sums of money. Some of the accounts were under fake names. She opened a folder labeled personal. There she found scanned papers, handwritten notes, and one file that stood out. Will_2.pdf. She opened it. It was a second version of the will, completely different from the one everyone had seen. In this one, the money was split very different. Claire's name was listed clearly. So was someone else's, Marissa, the youngest daughter, the one the family rarely spoke about. Claire sat back, heart racing. This changed everything. Then she played the audio file. It was her father-in-law's voice. He sounded tired but clear. He spoke slowly, as if he had been holding these words inside for a long time. He said he no longer trusted Judith. He believed she had changed over the years. He spoke about missing money, about lies. He talked about being forced to sign papers without reading them. He said he had made a second will, just in case. Claire listened twice. The second time, she saved the file to her phone and emailed it to herself. She backed up the documents and hid the originals in a place only she knew. For a long time, she sat on the bed in the dark thinking. These secrets were powerful. If anyone found out what she had, everything would explode. She thought of Judith's cold words, Ethan's silence, the way they treated her like she didn't belong. Now, she held something they never expected. She didn't plan to use it right away. She needed time. She needed to be smart. This wasn't just a pile of papers. This was the truth they had hidden for years. And now it was in her hands. The next morning, she walked through the house like always. She smiled when spoken to. She helped with breakfast. No one noticed anything different. But everything had changed. Claire was cleaning up the study when she came across a small photo album hidden behind some old files. It looked forgotten, dusty, and worn. She opened it, flipping through pages filled with family pictures. Near the back, something strange caught her eye. There were a few photos that didn't belong with the others. Judith, the proud and proper matriarch, was in them, but not with her husband. She was holding hands with someone else. The man was the family lawyer, always close to the Lancasters, always trusted. In some pictures, they were sitting too close at a restaurant. In others, walking into a hotel late at night. The way they looked at each other told the truth. It wasn't business. It wasn't friendship. It was something else. Claire felt no surprise, only quiet understanding. Judith had secrets of her own. Days later, Claire overheard Ethan talking softly on the phone. He was in the hallway, thinking no one could hear. His voice was low and kind, filled with affection. Claire stayed still, listening. When he said, "I'll see you soon," and ended the call, she didn't need to ask. Later, she checked his phone when he wasn't paying attention. There were messages from a young woman named Tara. They were full of hearts, short videos, and inside joke. Tara worked with Ethan. The truth was clear. The perfect family image was now full of cracks. Claire saw it all. The lies, the cheating, the fake smiles. But she stayed quiet. Around them, she acted the same, polite, calm, kind. Inside, she was watching everything. She began writing things down. Photos, messages, dates, small signs others would miss. She didn't ask questions or make a scene. She waited. She started doing small things to make them uneasy. She printed one of the hotel photos and left it in Judith's drawer. She placed a strange earring from Ethan's car in his jacket pocket. She left one of Tara's texts open on the iPad, as if by accident. Judith grew quiet. Ethan became nervous. They looked at each other with doubt. Whispers filled the house. Claire pretended not to notice. She smiled during meals, thanked Judith for her cooking, kissed Ethan goodbye in the morning. But every day, she watched them fall apart a little more, and she said nothing. Claire began putting her plan in motion. She knew the family had done many wrong things over the years, especially with money. She had seen secret files, heard hidden truths, and watched them lie to others. Now, she wanted to make sure someone else knew too. So she made a quiet phone call using a number no one could trace. Then another. She didn't give her name. She only gave facts. She sent documents and numbers to the tax office. She told them to look deeper into the Lancaster family's accounts. After that, she waited. At the same time, Claire reached out to someone the family never talked about anymore, Marissa, the youngest daughter. Years ago, Marissa had a hard time. She got into trouble, used drugs, and made bad choices. Judith said she had shamed the family. No one visited her. They acted like she didn't exist. Claire found Marissa living in a small apartment across town. She knocked on the door, and when Marissa opened it, her face showed shock. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Claire said she didn't come to judge. She came to talk. They sat down with coffee. Claire didn't lie. She told Marissa about the second will. She explained what she had found: hidden accounts, secret documents, and an audio recording. She said Judith had cheated, and the lawyer had helped her. She also said Marissa's name was in the second will, written clearly. Marissa was quiet at first. She looked at Claire with doubt. "Why tell me this?" she asked. Claire said, "Because they threw you away, and they want to do the same to me." Marissa sat back and thought for a long time. Then she nodded. She said she had things to share too, things no one else knew. In the weeks that followed, Marissa gave Claire folders full of information. Old messages, photos, emails, and stories. She had saved everything. There were details about the family's fake donations, stolen money, and secret deals. Claire read every word and saved everything in a private folder. While everyone in the Lancaster house was busy planning the will reading, Claire was working behind the scenes. She went into the office late at night. She found the files the family had prepared. Then, carefully and slowly, she made changes. She didn't destroy anything. She just switched a few papers. She moved some numbers, changed a few lines, and replaced the final version with the one her father-in-law had signed in secret. No one noticed. They were too busy arguing over who deserved what. Claire never raised her voice. She never made a scene. She smiled at the dinners, helped with the clothes for the event, and acted like nothing had changed. But inside, she knew she had already changed everything. The truth was hidden in plain sight, ready to show itself at the right time. The room was large and full of soft light. Expensive chairs lined the sides. Everyone in the Lancaster family had dressed their best. They were smiling, drinking champagne, and speaking with pride. Judith sat straight, looking pleased. Ethan stood close to her, calm and confident. They all believed the money would stay with them. Claire sat quietly at the edge of the table. She wore a simple dress, her hands folded in her lap. She listened as the family joked and whispered. No one spoke to her much. They looked at her like she didn't matter. The lawyer entered the room with a folder. He placed it on the table, opened it slowly, and cleared his throat. "This is the final will of Mr. Henry Lancaster," he said. The room went silent. Everyone watched as he began to read. He named the smaller gifts first: charities, staff, old friends. Then he came to the main part. The majority of the estate, including property and funds totaling $35 million, he paused, is to go to Claire Lancaster. For a moment, no one moved. The room froze. Then a loud gasp came from Judith. She stood up suddenly, her face full of rage. "This is a lie," she shouted. "You tricked him. You used him. He would never give that to you." Ethan stepped forward, his voice sharp. "This doesn't belong to you," he said. "Sign it over to the family. Now." Claire stayed seated. Her voice was calm. "No, I won't." Judith's hands shook. She grabbed the check from the lawyer's hand. "You don't deserve this," she screamed. Ethan tried to stop her, but she pushed past him. There was a fireplace nearby, still burning from the morning fire. Without a second thought, Judith held the check over the flame. The paper caught quickly. Everyone watched as the $35 million burned to ash. Some of the family gasped. Others just stared. They thought they had won. They thought they had taken everything back. But Claire didn't look angry. She didn't cry. She only smiled, cold, still, and sure. No one understood her smile. It was not the smile of someone who lost. It was the smile of someone who had already finished the game. The fire crackled. The room stayed quiet. Claire sat back in her chair. They thought they had ruined her, but they had no idea what she had already done. After the will reading, Claire went home quietly. The sounds of shouting and burning still echoed in her mind, but she felt no sadness. She sat at her desk, opened a drawer, and took out a small flash drive. It was silver, plain, and quiet, but what it held was powerful. Inside were copies of every secret she had found: bank records, emails, private photos, audio files, and old contracts. Everything was sorted and named clearly. She placed the flash drive in an envelope and wrote 3 addresses on separate packages. One went to the IRS, one to a popular news website, one to a large newspaper in the city. She used gloves so there would be no prints. Then she dropped them in 3 different mailboxes, far apart, making sure no one saw her. When she walked away, her heart was calm. She had done her part. Now it was their turn. 2 days later, it began. The news broke early in the morning. The front page of the newspaper had a photo of Judith and the lawyer walking out of a hotel. The headline spoke of secret deals, stolen money, and hidden accounts. Another article talked about Ethan's spending, how he used company funds to buy gifts for his girlfriend and took money meant for donations. A third piece focused on the family's history of lies and their fake image in public. Social media exploded. People started sharing the articles. TV news picked up the story. Reporters stood outside the Lancaster estate, asking questions. Cameras flashed. Microphones were pushed through the gate. Claire watched it all from her living room. The TV was on. Her phone was silent. She had nothing more to say. By noon, the bank accounts were frozen. The family's business stopped running. Judith tried to call people, but no one answered. She couldn't move money, couldn't reach her usual contacts. Her name was now linked to fraud and lies. Later that week, a letter came to the Lancaster house. It was from the court. Judith was ordered to appear in front of a judge. A subpoena. She was being investigated. She dropped the letter when she read it, her hands shaking. The family lawyer, the same man seen with Judith in the hotel photos, faced trouble too. His name was in the papers Claire had sent. He had helped change the first will and hide the second one. Once the truth came out, the lawyer's license was taken away. He was no longer allowed to practice law. His office closed, and his name was removed from the building. People stopped answering Ethan's calls. His job was at risk. Investors pulled out. Clients left. The company was falling, and he had no one to blame but himself. He sat in his office, staring at the wall, unable to fix what was broken. Through all of this, Claire said nothing. She didn't make a post, give an interview, or ask for praise. She simply stayed home, reading books and drinking tea. Sometimes she would turn on the news for a few minutes, just to see what was happening. Then she would turn it off again. The house felt quiet, peaceful. She didn't smile in public or laugh out loud. But inside, she felt something different. Not joy, but peace. They had tried to shame her, to throw her away. They burned her check thinking it would hurt her. But the check was never her plan. Her plan was already moving long before they lit that fire. Now everything they built was breaking. Not by chance, by design. And she was the one who had pulled the first thread. Ethan came to Claire's house one evening. He looked tired and upset. His clothes were messy, and his voice was low. He said he wanted to talk. Claire stood in the doorway, calm and silent. He told her that everything was falling apart. The family's money was locked. The company was sinking. The news wouldn't stop. Reporters were still outside the estate. No one was helping them anymore. He looked at her and asked, "Can we start over?" He said he was sorry. He said he missed her. He even offered her his share of whatever money they could still save. Claire didn't get angry. She just looked at him without emotion. Then she said something that made him freeze. She told him she had known about his affair for months. She had seen the messages. She had the photos. More than that, she had a recording of him talking to someone about her. In that recording, he had said Claire was easy to replace, and that she was only with him for the money. His face turned pale. He had no words. Claire closed the door gently in his face. The next morning, Marissa's face was on every screen. She had agreed to an interview with a big news station. She sat in a simple chair, looking calm and serious. She didn't raise her voice. She spoke clearly. She told the world what life inside the Lancaster family was really like. She talked about how they controlled people, how they pushed her away when she needed help, how they cared only about money and power. She told stories from her childhood, how Judith had screamed at the staff, how Ethan and the others had laughed when she cried. She shared things only someone close could know. The reporter asked, "Why now?" Marissa said, "Because people need to know the truth. And I'm not afraid anymore." That one interview changed everything. News outlets played it again and again. People who once respected the Lancasters began to turn away. Former friends stopped calling. Their name became a symbol of greed and lies. Everyone was talking about them, but not with respect, with shame. Judith was invited to speak on live television to defend herself. She wore a formal dress and tried to look strong. But the moment the interviewer asked about the will, the fraud, and the interview Marissa gave, her face changed. She began to talk fast, then louder. She shouted over questions. Her words stopped making sense. Her hands shook. She cried and yelled. The cameras kept rolling. The live broadcast was cut short, but not before millions saw her lose control. It became a trending video. People shared clips and made comments. Some felt sorry for her, but most saw it as the fall of someone who had always acted untouchable. Back at home, Claire watched it all quietly. She didn't cheer or celebrate. She simply sat in silence. The family that once looked down on her was now broken. Not by luck, by truth. And truth, when finally shown, had done what no shouting or fighting ever could. Claire sat alone in her quiet room. The house was still. The chaos outside no longer touched her. She looked out the window, but her mind was far away, thinking of the past. Not the past with Ethan, but much earlier. She was a child again, sitting in the small staff quarters behind the Lancaster estate. Her mother worked as a maid in the big house. Every day, her mother cleaned floors, washed clothes, and served food with care. She worked hard and never complained. Claire remembered watching her mother leave early in the morning and come home late, always tired but smiling. One day, everything changed. Judith had lost a bracelet, an expensive one. Without asking questions, she blamed Claire's mother. There was no proof, but Judith's word was enough. She called her a thief in front of the other staff and fired her on the spot. Her mother tried to explain, but no one listened. The guards were told to escort her out. Claire stood nearby, holding her mother's hand, confused and afraid. They left with nothing but a small bag of clothes. Her mother cried that night, not because of the job, but because of the shame. Claire sat beside her and promised she would never forget what happened. She didn't. Years passed. Claire grew up and went to college. She met Ethan during a school event. He was kind, charming, and warm at first. She didn't know he was part of the same Lancaster family until much later. When she found out, she almost walked away. But something inside her paused. She remembered her promise. Still, she didn't plan anything then. She married Ethan for love, even if a small voice in her heart still held that pain. At first, she thought maybe the family had changed, but they hadn't. Judith still gave her cold looks. The others treated her like she didn't belong. They whispered about her background, about her clothes, her voice. Ethan stopped defending her. Slowly, Claire saw the same pride and cruelty that had destroyed her mother's life. Everything inside her turned quiet. Not angry, just clear. She didn't shout. She watched. She listened. She waited. Then the day came when she opened a drawer in the study and found papers, recordings, and secret. In that moment, something clicked. It was not just revenge. It was justice. She copied everything carefully. She made a plan. She didn't need to scream or break things. All she had to do was tell the truth at the right time. The truth would do the rest. The fire they set when they burned her check did not destroy her. It only marked the start of their fall. Claire never cared about the money. Not really. What she wanted was simple: to make them feel the pain they once gave so freely. To take away their power, their name, their pride. Just like they took away her mother's honor. Now it was done, and she was at peace. The Lancaster estate was cold and quiet. Dust covered the floor. The walls once filled with laughter and pride now stood silent. The family had lost everything. Their name was no longer respected. Their money was gone. Their power had faded. The estate went up for auction. Few people showed interest. The name Lancaster no longer held value. But one person made an offer through a private company. No one knew who bought it. The paperwork was clean. It was bought under an LLC with no direct connection to Claire. Weeks later, Judith and Ethan arrived to gather their things. They walked through the big wooden doors slowly. The air felt heavy. They looked around at the empty halls and quiet room. It no longer felt like home. As they entered the foyer, they saw someone standing near the stairs. It was Claire. She wore a simple dress and looked calm. Judith froze. Ethan said nothing. Claire looked at them without anger. Her voice was steady. She told them she now owned the house. She let them come in this one last time to take what belonged to them. Then she gave them a choice: leave now and stay silent, or she would release the rest of what she had: more recordings, more proof, more secrets. The files would destroy what little was left of their name. Judith opened her mouth, but no words came. Her hands trembled. Ethan looked away. Neither of them argued. They picked up their boxes and walked out the door. No shouting, no threats, just silence. They left the house they once ruled with heads down and hearts broken. That night, Claire sat alone in the study. The same study where it had all begun. The same place she had found the hidden drawer. The fire in the fireplace burned gently. She held a glass of wine in her hand. The room was warm and still. She looked around, not at the furniture, but at the quiet peace. There was no check to burn this time, only the soft flames dancing in the fire. What had burned now was not money. It was a legacy built on pride, lies, and cruelty. That legacy was gone. Claire did not smile widely. She did not laugh. She simply sat there, calm and steady. Her work was done, and this was her final move. Was Ethan right to walk away from it all, or should he have stood by his family one last time? I'd love to know what you think. Share your thoughts in the comments. If stories like this keep you hooked, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more twists ahead.